So this one, I have many successful contact points, but I also have a collection of mystery contact points that were supposed to do something, but I got almost instant silence. So I basically put them off to the side and not for prime time kind of use. And we just had a failure. That's the other fun with circuit bending. When you're dealing with 40-year-old wires, you get some strange behaviors sometimes. So now you get to see live edits.
Oh, one just fell, something just fell on the floor
Yeah.
What's that?
there. At your feet.
That's just little resistor lights away. No, this one, power.
Got it.
So, kind of an important guy. So we'll get him hooked up again with an elevator clip. So typically with the circuit bending, I would use little helper hands, little alligator clip hands like this, and basically hold this in here and then resolder this piece, and then either reattach it to where it needs to be on the circuit, or while still investigating before finishing up on this, just connect it with an alligator clip temporarily. And your other friend in circuit bending, at least for me, is painter's tape, because things move around all the time. And this doesn't really usually stick too strongly to anything. I can't recommend the old style electrical tape, because no matter what you put it on, it just becomes like mush and goo in the future, and if you leave it on there, you don't want to go back to that circuit later, because it'll just heat up and be a mess. But just for stability, a lot of times I'll just use painter's tape, just to keep everybody staying put. And hopefully we have enough to go on now to at least run him. Okay, so he's running, and now we're going to be a little more gentle this time. And get it to a way that we can. So we saw the circuit. We see that there's a power connector, and we have disconnected the batteries. And that's the other challenge when you're working with these things. You either disconnect yourself, or the batteries fall out because there's nothing holding them in. So you can see live how we're going to make this work. Usually it's the standard take. And it doesn't leave much residue, which is nice. Just keeps everybody in place. So hopefully I can do this with. Okay. So now there are many different sets of wires that I have here, and they're related to each other, so they only work together. And disconnect power over. That is what happens. So what you're seeing is real world challenges in circuit bending. Try not to break the circuit while turning on the circuit. This is like watching somebody try to type a word on a computer. He's alive, he's alive. Where are my wires? They're right there. And he's not alive. Why are you not alive, buddy? Good, good. Any word is big one. Well, that one is proving to not show up the way that I expected. He's based on a certain resistor, and without that are working right, then it's not gonna work. So we're gonna go to a different one. We're gonna go to a looping circuit. In a lot of the looping circuits, you have to start the sound and then trigger the loop. So you can have things like that on a switch, and so you can lock into that kind of glitchy sound. But then there's other modifications that you can add distortion on top of that with some of these bends. Okay, that's a new one. And parallel. So that's the challenge. If you do too many of these things in a row, they sort of build on each other. So at times you want to be choosing only one or two modifications live, because it will overload the circuit over time. And it could be a second, it could be minutes, it's just going to vary. And as long as you see the display still working, and this failure was, once again, power. It was not the circuit bending failing, it was the power connector failing. So, have good solder comes in your power. That's what I recommend most. So that's a little bit of what can be done with the Speak series. There's Speak and Read, Speak and Math, and Speak and Spell are the most popular ones. And then I found a website that was like the encyclopedia of Texas Instruments toys, and there's a long laundry list of these toys all over the world. I had no idea there's so many. So there's some in French, there's some in possibly Japanese or Chinese, there's some with English accents, American accents, and so there's variations. And then there's some that are smaller versions of this for even younger audiences, where they're talking about colors and shapes. So there's just different versions of these toys so that they could like put their chips in like a whole series of things out in the world. Other tools that I would recommend strongly is a multimeter. Even just a simple multimeter will work. I don't have an oscilloscope. I have a tiny oscilloscope, but I don't have a fancy oscilloscope that you see people doing their audio feedback, audio waves on them. But just a simple one like this, where you can test for continuity. So that tells you if you're connecting from point to point, are these wires connected or not connected? So before you solder something, a lot of times it's good to check like one point to another point to make sure that the neighbors aren't already originally connected in the circuit, because after you solder it, it's going to be non-obvious if you've run the solder too close to those 2 points and connected it by mistake and it's bad, or connected it by mistake and it's no big deal. So that's another thing to do, is like before you solder certain parts of the circuit, for at least a more premium toy like the Speak series, I'd recommend triple checking along the way. But if it's just like a thrift store find that is no big deal and you got it for $1 or something, go try some other ones if that one dies. And that's the other thing you have to be willing to accept in circuit bending, is that the toys, some of them will die instantly when you try, and some you'll find that sweet spot, and that series of that toy is one that makes sense for you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I've seen some videos online where people are like working around in there and they're like licking their fingers and they're touching things.
Yeah, another technique is to just touch around the circuit. So Reed, I don't remember how to say his last name properly, it starts with a G, but he's known as the father of circuit bending, and I think in the 50s or 60s, he and his brother, they would touch inside of like tube-based radios and try to manipulate the radio with their hands and shortwave radios. So they managed can still burn yourself doing even transistor radio if you touch the wrong points.
Gotcha.
But that is another technique where people will just write their finger and like sort of like noodle around on the board to try to find a spot that is acting strange. And so then you can expose those two contacts on the outside of the case and just have like a bolt, whether it's 2 bolts coming through or 1, and then just touch that on the outside of the case when the toy is playing, it'll be the same effect.
Okay.
So that is another technique that could be used. And same with some of these wires here that I have that I'm using, I'm going to add switches to them, or a push button. You could have it be just 2 pieces of metal that you're touching on the outside, whether it's copper tape or nuts and bolts kind of setup. And then you just solder to the back of the bolts after it's through the case.
It works like the Arturia, like touch strip keyboards and things. Your body is like it's like closing the circuit. You become like part of the resistance of the circuit.
Yeah. And same with like the stylophones and things like that. That's how some of that portion of the circuit works, to touch those keypads that aren't really a keypad. They're just exposed metal. And in terms of cases and working with the cases, I would recommend 1, not dull drill bits, and a power drill of some kind. It makes it a lot easier. Also makes it easier to take apart a lot of the toys, since a lot of toys are manufactured on a factory line, and someone has the super skinny drill, and they're just going to zip up the case, so you can just reverse that process and take it apart. In terms of modifying the cases, this was an example when I was playing around with adding switches to toys for accessibility years ago. And so these buttons, you could solder to the button, whether it's for circuit bending or accessibility. You can solder to the contact points of the button inside the toy, and then expose it through a mono jack, and then plug a mono jack into that, where it could be added, a switch outside of the toy can be added. So for like people that can't manipulate the toy in the traditional way, but they have like a touchpad on a wheelchair or in their seats or on the table, they can actually play the toy without having to manipulate the complexity of the toy at times. So that was another area that shows you techniques on how to modify things, would be accessibility mods. And you can combine those same skills with circuit bending. And in terms of let me see if I have it here. So this is what the Messy Workshop looks like. So after you drill a hole in one of these plastic cases, so the drill's much smaller than you need to fit, fit this potentiometer through. So you want to drill a hole that's smaller than that, and then this reading tool, which is basically acts like a hand drill, and you can basically send this into the case, into the hole that you made, and then just turn it slightly, and don't get too excited with it because it will melt, the plastic will start to heat up and melt, and then you just have a blobby big opening, and then you'll have to fill it in somehow so you can fit your knobs and switches. But so sort of be cautious when drilling into the cases, and most of them seem to be easy enough to drill through. Certain older plastics seem to be more brittle, but anything from like the 80s through now, most of the time is good. Really young toys, like for like toddlers, some of those are a softer plastic and get really mushy really fast. Like they're not a brittle plastic, but they're more of a soft plastic. Like that piano up front there, the bottom side of it, it's like a mush. It like just turns to soup if you drill into it. But like these cases are hard plastic. So I recommend the harder plastic cases if you want to drill through things and add external switches. I'm just trying to think of what else can be done with this. Like I said, always record all the time because you never know when you're going to hit that interesting glitchy sound sequence, and then that may be the end of that circuit. Because I had that happen a few times where it was just like a little like jumped in toy, or a part of a toy that like was just at like the big blue bin Goodwills. Have you seen anyone see those where they just cart these big blue bins the size of tables into the room, and then people just go at it and try to grab things that they want to grab out of the bins. Those are sometimes the more interesting places to go to find. Typically, you wouldn't find this guy, but you might, because people are looking for something else. Someone's looking for Nike Air, someone's looking for old books or films, someone's looking for the latest kitchenware. So you never know what you're going to find at those places. But sometimes you can get just like a little junk toy that it works fine, but it didn't do much. And it's a good experiment to practice on. And sometimes you get goodness, but you also have to hit record, because I didn't hit record then, and I found some amazing glitchy sounds that will never be heard. So I also record some of these sounds and then put them into a sampler. I happen to have a Eurorack-based sampler, but you could use any of your standard samplers too for music production, or put it into your computer or make a mix. So I've also used it that way for performances.
I have a question. How hard is it to get into the greeting card circuits? I saw you had the greeting card opened earlier.
Oh,
That's kind of before.
there's not much to it.
Oh, cool. So I didn't realize this was made of that.
Yeah. Now there's just a little slider that that when you open the card, it moves a piece of plastic, and the metal is just a spring metal, and it's always touching unless that plastic is slid underneath it. And so when you open the card, it slides the plastic away, and so that's just your on-off button.
You ever try to combine like multiple toys to make like
The mega toy.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too. Yeah. Like,
That's a good idea.
yeah, the like
it could be a multi-voice toy.
yeah,
Is
like
that
American,
toy
Japanese, like fusing the boards together. Have
That
people
could be
done
fun.
that? Right.
More cyberpunk style.
I mean, yeah, it sounds like that would be quite a palette, you know. Like,
Yeah, or if you can get the same toy from different country origins, or the same. There's also many toys, at least the younger toys, where they have English, French, and Spanish on like early. The one that the drum machine here is only a
The drum machine.
three-piece drum machine, but you could drive it. You could drive it and trigger it through this, so you could have this guy going with your synthesizer or your Eurorack, and just have it punch each of these guys through. Do you have a question about it?
Yeah.
So that is another option, and this one does have 3 languages. Yeah. English, Spanish, and French. So you could also have a switch where you sway in and out of that. And maybe it's an analog switch, so it's a softer flow instead of like a hard.
So French drums sound different?
What's that?
French drums sound different?
The French drums are the same, it's just the way they describe a different language, or describing the colors in a different language, or the numbers. Because it's 3 things here. It's colors, numbers, and music.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm really intrigued by like the looping and the glitching circuits. And I'm like, oh, is that something that can be incorporated into like a simple circuit like the greeting card? Or is that like,
Maybe.
that's really
the challenge.
going
Certain
too
circuits
far?
are so simple that there's not many manipulation points. Unless you want to decap it and then like take the black blob away, and somehow the circuit survives after you took that away. That would be a big challenge. That's like you're at next level, beyond next level there for sort of deconstructing the circuit. Because then you're going down to the microcontroller level.
No, I guess you could use something like Ableton or something, and just run it into that, and then
Yeah.
make the sounds that way.
Yeah, you can record all that and then just have your own sample libraries. And I've seen different people in the region even
I can see that.
record like samples from like say an old Commodore and then come up with like a whole sample library set that they sell as for DAWs and things like that.
You can even take
If you
like
want
a
like
microphone and just whack it against different things and get record different sounds and manipulate that as whatever you want to do.
You should check out Carl Fury, that he's played here and he plays Cosmic Crossings
Mhm.
because he does a lot of bow work and
Yeah.
sound
I've
boxes.
seen, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so you can combine the things, you're not limited, just give another voice. I think that's the majority of what I have right now. I have other circuits that are opened up if you wanted to see other types of circuits. But that was the majority of what I was going to cover for this. Any other questions?
Do you have any
Or suggestions?
performances
What's that?
do you have any performances you could play? Or
That you play. You can scan my link tree here and it goes to some of the YouTube performances for Ben Noise. And then I also am on Insta where most of my performances are on Instagram here and there. And then sometimes there's other people from here that are performing on here.
So where's a good place to start if like, I want to start messing around?
Salvation Army, Goodwill,
Okay.
start there.
Whatever I find for
So,
cheap.
whatever you find for super cheap that you don't mind if it breaks. And then, in terms of tooling, like a basic soldering kit might have just enough. Because all you need is some resistors. You don't even need a soldering iron. You could just use wires and alligator clips and resistors to try to get to a point of finding that sweet spot. And then if you want to take it further, then I'd recommend a benchtop style soldering iron. Don't get a soldering iron and just plug into the wall like a hairdryer, because those things are just, you're just gonna burn your hand off. Like they're unfriendly and they're unfriendly to work with. Like you can use them, they'll work, but I can't recommend them. Like one that you can tune and you know exactly what temperature you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
That's the best kind to start with, even if it's a $50 one. And then the other key to soldering is one is practice and cleanliness on the equipment, and just keep the tool clean, but also keep the tool wet, meaning that when you touch the solder to the soldering iron, it'll have like just a super shiny silvery look to it, and that's the wet look. Because once it gets like gray, then all of a sudden that's when the heat is coming away from it and it becomes solid metal again. And the other challenge with soldering irons is if you oxidize the tip in any way, no matter what temperature your soldering iron goes up to, that area will not melt the solder one bit. Like it could be 700 degrees on the soldering iron, it won't melt the metal because it's just the chemistry and the physics of that. So that's the other challenge that I had in the past, where it's just like, why is nothing working? I'm at like 300 degrees and nothing's melting other than the plastic. So, also ventilation is recommended.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I have to say it out loud.
Yeah.
So like I have a fan that has 2 charcoal filters on each side, and there's pro versions that you can get where there's like little charcoal cartridges that are just fans that you can point close to the work and it'll just bend it away and filter it. Did you have some question?
Yeah. Building on that. So, do you ever do it outside, or you always mainly solder inside?
I have a workbench in the basement, so I just use
Okay.
that.
Do you keep windows open? No. Okay.
It's not 100%.
There you go.
Factory related.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I think the lead.
Keep it kind of dangerous then.
And use no lead solder, that's the other key.
I always use the solder with lead in it because it works better.
Oh, it solders quicker and faster.
Yeah, I'm not, you know, people use it for decades and nothing ever happens, so.
God, that's crazy.
you know.
It just depends on your disposition and your uptake of lead, yeah.
When I was a kid, I played with mercury a couple times. We didn't know it was bad for us, so, you know, it's in the nerves.
Yeah, also stick with the no lead solder, though some of the toys, even the modern ones, you don't know what you're getting into under there, so wear safety goggles if you don't wear glasses, things like that. So in case like a little fleck of solder flies off when you're working, like just everyday safety is good too.
What are those magnifying goggles that you had? What are they called and where do you get those?
You can probably get these at, say, like a Harbor Freight.
Okay,
That would be my first guess as to where, these I think were my dad's from like a bunch of tools I inherited from him.
okay.
And they tend to work, and then they have multiple levels. They have one level of magnification, and then they got this little flip down if you want to get even more magnified. And then they have this little loop that I can't use it because it just, you'd have to be like this close to something. It's great if you're just looking at something, but to actually work on it, I don't think this is the right tool. But this is like very basic. This is like dollar store style
Okay.
headset. And there's fancier ones where there's like real good lenses in them, but these work good enough sometimes. The other that I use is a lot of times is this guy, where I just want to zoom in on something and see what's going on. And so you do it here. There we go. So you can zoom in and like look to see like, did I fringe that point to point, or is it clean and there's space between? And then this is just a toy kid's microscope. It also takes pictures and video. Really bad video, okay pictures.
Okay.
But you could get really right in there and see
That's not bad.
where you're at.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
So I'd recommend Goodwill for things like this too.
Yeah.
Because there's just random things where it's like, that thing has to leave the house now. And so it ends up over there. But I think you could do it for on the cheap, really, really good. And then if you want to get more advanced, it's more so just like what type of equipment you pick up. But thank you for all the questions. And come up if you want to check and try anything, or I have others that are opened up. And part of the fun of this is just tearing it down, like tearing apart the toys, seeing like, how did they build this thing? And then you learn more and more about different types of toys and different generations of toys. Where this Texas Instruments one was designed for being manufactured fast. Like there's 2 screws that hold this whole thing together, and 4 plastic snaps. And they weren't intended to come off ever again. So you just gotta be careful on not over prying the snaps back so that you can open the case. And then there's other toys that I found that I don't know how to open them yet. Like, there's a next generation called Super Speak and Spell. I have one, but it's, all I hear is creaking when I'm like getting close to like trying to pull it. And I'm like, where are the clips? Or are they blind clips on the inside of the case and I'll never see them? So it just varies. So premium toys, I don't recommend just ripping them off, unless you can afford lots of premium toys, then go for it. But otherwise, I recommend tearing up the cheap toys.
Thanks, Scott. Everybody give Scott a round of applause.